Now, we have had several stories about Moses. So who wants to tell me one of the stories we told about Moses?
Moses raising his staff with Aaron and Hur over the Amalekite
Okay, right, the
Israelite battle.
Amalekite War, and they held up his staff, right? Okay, who told that story? Did
You
Vivian
did.
tell it? I did, or did you? Diane told that story. Okay,
I preached
Diane?
that sermon
Diane
today.
told that story. Yes, she did. Okay, Vivian, what story did you tell?
The rock one.
Okay, where Moses took the rod and struck the rock, and what happened when he struck that rock?
The water comes out.
Water came out. Do you remember where that was?
Rephidim.
Yeah, that was in the wilderness of Zin. And we're going to look at the wilderness of Zin today too. And then we had another story. What was the other story we had?
Yeah.
No, we didn't have another one. Jeff, did you tell the
The
story?
spies
I
going
told
into
us-
the land.
Yeah, the result of the spies going into the land.
Oh
And
yeah,
they,
and that's that.
and they did not want to take the land. And so they had to march around the desert. How many more years?
40
40.
40
40
years.
more years around the desert. And none of the people alive would enter the land except for
Caleb and Joshua.
and Joshua. And all of us are thinking, I'm sure that, what about Moses? Isn't he going to enter into the land too?
That's not quite right. It was Caleb and Joshua and all the people that were 20 years younger.
Under the age of 20, under the age of 20. That's
Yeah.
absolutely right. Well, in this story that we're going to do today, they're in their it appears that they're in the last year of traveling in the 40 years in the desert. Almost everyone has died that rebelled against the Lord. And we are about to go into they're just like on the final stages of the journey. Miriam is Moses' sister. Okay, Aaron is the high priest. He's Moses' brother. And Aaron had a rod that represented his authority as high priest. And there were people that argued with Moses and Aaron and saying, we should run things around here. And so God had Moses take everyone's rod and put their rod in the desert. And the rod that budded was the one who would represent the high priest and be the high priest. Well, Aaron's rod budded, and it didn't just bud, but it flowered, and it had almonds on it and leaves on it. And it was like a stick separated from a tree that was alive. And it's always referred to as Aaron's rod that budded. And God told Aaron and Moses to put that rod in the most holy place as a remembrance of God's authority. Okay? And with that, I think we can start our story today. Okay? So, the children of Israel, the whole congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin. And according to the commandment of God, they camped in Kadesh. Kadesh. And there was no water in Kadesh. And Miriam died in Kadesh and was buried in Kadesh. And there was no water for the congregation to drink. So the congregation gathered together against Moses and against Aaron, and they argued with Moses. And they said, would to God we had died in the wilderness when our brothers died before the Lord. And why have you brought the congregation of the Lord into the desert for us to die of thirst and for our children to die of thirst and our cattle to die of thirst? And why have you brought us into this miserable place where there are no beans and there's no figs and there's no grapes and there's no pomegranates and there's no water? And Moses and Aaron walked away from the congregation of the Lord and fell down on their faces at the door to the entrance of the tent of meeting. And there the glory of God appeared to Moses and to Aaron. And God spoke to Moses, and he said, Moses, take the rod from the holy place, and you and Aaron go and gather the congregation together at the rock. And Moses, speak to the rock, and water will come forth out of the rock. You will bring water out of the rock for the children of Israel to drink. So Moses took the rod, and he and Aaron gathered together the congregation. And Moses said, listen up, you rebels. Shall we bring water out of this rock? And Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with the rod. And water came out, and the children of Israel were able to drink and their cattle. And the Lord said to Moses, Moses, Aaron, because you did not believe me to set me apart as holy before the children of Israel, neither you, Moses, nor you, Aaron, will lead the children of Israel into the land which I promised to give to them. These are the waters of Meribah, because there the children of Israel fought with the Lord, and the Lord was sanctified as holy before them. And that is our story today. Isn't that an interesting story?
Yes, it is. Very good.
Very
Well done.
good, Andrew.
Well, thank you.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. And it's a kind of a weird story in a sense too, because you're kind of hoping that Moses and Aaron are going to make it, right? Well, they don't make it. So it is very sad. But the children of Israel got water, so that was good. Would anyone like to try to retell that story? As a, just whatever you can remember of the story, even if it's just 2 words, starting with the whole congregation of the children of Israel traveled to the wilderness of Sin, camped in Kadesh, and Miriam.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I'll do
Jay.
it. Let me
All
try.
right. All right.
And so they were in that place and they were camping, and it's at that time that Miriam died and they buried her there. Then there was no water, and the people complained to Moses that they were thirsty. They needed something to drink, and their animals were thirsty and they needed something to drink. And they said, why have you brought us out into this wilderness, and we don't have enough to eat and we don't have enough to drink? And I don't know if this is correct, but I think they said something like, why did you bring us out from Egypt into this land that doesn't have any? And then they list these foods, these figs and grain and so forth, and no water, and just for us to die out here in the wilderness.
Uh-huh.
Well, then Moses and Aaron, they turn and they go to the tent of meeting, and they fall down on their faces before the Lord, and the glory of the Lord appears to them, and the Lord speaks to them, and he says, take the rod from the holy place and go assemble the people before the rock and speak to the rock, and call forth water from the rock, and you will cause the water to come from the rock, and the people will have something to drink. And then, well, Moses does take that rod, and he goes with Aaron, and they assemble the people together, and he says, you rebels, are we supposed to bring water out of this rock for you? And then he raises his hand, he strikes the rock twice, and water comes out. It comes out abundantly, and the people do drink, and the animals do drink. And then the Lord addresses Aaron and Moses, and he says, because, how does he say that? Because you have disobeyed my voice, and you've not shown me as holy before the people of Israel, you will not enter into the land that I promise. And then the very last part is, and those waters are called Meribah, because the people contended with the Lord there.
Jeff, that was fantastic. Let's give Jeff an applause. I don't even know how to say thank you. That was such a great job. I don't think you
Okay,
did.
all right, all right.
Man, that was really, really, really good.
I've
Congratulations.
had some practice.
Yeah, okay. And Vivian made the pomegranate sign, I think.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, she wanted you to say pomegranate sign.
Don't forget the
Really
pomegranates.
good, Vivian. That was really good. Okay. Well, let's try to go through the story together. You guys can help me. So the whole congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin and
Camp there?
And there.
camped in Kadesh, And Miriam, what happened to Miriam in Kadesh?
Hi.
Miriam died and she was buried in Kadesh. And there was a problem because they lacked a substance in Kadesh.
Water.
They didn't have any water in Kadesh. And so
H2O.
the children of Israel contended with Moses and contended with Aaron. And they fought with Moses and they said, what did they say exactly? If only we had died when our brothers died before the
For the
Lord.
Lord.
And why have you taken the Lord's congregation into the desert to
Kill us of thirst?
kill us of thirst and our
Children.
I think it was our animals.
Livestock.
Our livestock.
Okay.
And why have you brought us into this miserable place? And Jeff said that there were 4 things listed. So let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can list it. Why have you
Grain.
brought us into the miserable place where there are no beans? Okay.
No beans. Okay.
Oh.
Beans.
Fig,
Figs, no figs. Okay.
Figs.
no, great.
Pomegranates.
Right, but there's one right before
Grapes.
grapes, and then the last one is pomegranates. Let's all make the sign of pomegranates to honor Vivian, who remembered pomegranates. And there's no
Water.
right. And so Moses took God's rod and just slew them left and right like the lightsaber.
I don't think so.
No, he struck the
He
rock.
hasn't
Right.
watched.
So I gotta let the dog out. Give me a second. Go right out of here, right in the middle of a really good story. Okay, so Moses
Moses.
left the congregation of children of Israel. What did he do?
He fell
Fell
down.
down.
He and Aaron fell on their faces. Where?
The
the
tent
tent.
meeting.
At the
door.
entrance of the tent of meeting. And what appeared to them?
The glory of
The
God.
glory of God.
I guess who appeared to them? The
Yeah,
glory
right.
of the Lord appeared to Moses and Aaron. And then God
So
spoke to Moses. And he said, Moses,
Take the
Go.
Take the rod.
Get the rod,
mm,
okay? And you and Aaron
Speak to the
assemble the congregation where?
the rock.
In
Gather
front
up.
of the rock, right? And then Moses, you
speak to
Speak.
the
speak to the rock, and water will
No.
come out.
come out.
come out of the rock. You will bring
Water.
Water.
water out of the rock, and the children of
Hmm.
Israel will drink in their cattle.
Mm.
And so, what did Moses do? What did he go to get?
Rock.
He got the rod from before
Yep.
the presence of the Lord, and then he and Aaron
Assemble the
Gather-
people.
assemble the
assembled the
people.
congregation, and then Moses said,
Rebel.
You rebels.
"Listen up, you rebels! That's right. Shall
We.
shall we?" He didn't say I. He said we. Shall
we.
we?
Bring water.
Shall we?
Water.
I guess that's what I should have done. Shall we bring forth
Mm.
water out of this rock?
Mm.
And he took his rod, and what did he do with the rod?
He hit it
Bam,
twice.
bam.
How many times did he hit it?
Twice.
Two.
And
The water came
Water
forth.
came out.
water came forth out of the rocks for the children of Israel and their cattle to drink. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron,
Because-
you did not believe for me.
You didn't
Yeah.
sanctify.
because you did not believe me.
Yep. That's the part I left out. You did not believe
to
me.
Set me apart as holy
Mm.
before the children of Israel. Neither you, Moses,
For Aaron.
nor you, Aaron, will
Go and.
lead the children of Israel into the land I promised to give them. And then Jeff summed it up real good. These are the waters of
Arabah.
Meribah, because they're the children of Israel
And against God.
Offended.
fought with the Lord, and the Lord was set apart as holy before them. And that's the end of our story. And I believe I heard someone going "Tss, tss, tss, tss," when God was a little mad at Moses and Aaron. Who did that?
Did someone hiss?
I thought so.
I didn't miss. It
I
was a-
thought she said tisk 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 tisk. Yeah, I thought that was kind of good. All right. What do you think God was feeling when Moses is taking that living rod of the high priest, and he takes that rod and he hits it? Now, I mean, when he hits that rod when he hits that rock with the living rod that has almonds and flowers and buds and leaves on it, and they're flying everywhere. I mean, they've got to be flying everywhere. What do you think God is thinking?
No, stop. Don't do that.
Don't you?
I said speak, I said speak.
I said, speak, speak. Yeah. Oh my God.
There's another one that messed it up.
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
Speak to the rock,
Speak to
and
the
also he
rock.
said,
not to the people. You're
Hey.
just gonna say dumb stuff to the people. Talk to the rock.
It's the last year. It's the first month of the last year. Is
Right.
the thing too. I mean, he almost made it. He almost made it.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. It's kind of weird, you know. Well, okay. Well,
It's like a work of art, that when you describe it the way you do, Andrew, you say the almonds are on there, the leaves are on there, this thing is alive and it's been in the holy place. And it's like you're taking, it's a very special thing in and of itself, but it's beautiful as well. And when he hits it on the rock, he's ruining that.
yeah.
It's,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go on. Let's look at the story. So the children of Israel traveled through the wilderness of sin and camped in Kadesh, close to Rephidim, I imagine. And Miriam dies in Kadesh, and there's no water. And the children of Israel immediately start to complain to Moses. Did Moses get a chance to grieve his sister's death?
he was probably in the middle of that grieving process.
yeah.
Well,
I
I
just
wanna
thought
learn
of that.
about- Yeah, I want to learn about the children of Israel, that they didn't let Moses grieve. They just started to complain about not
Wow.
having.
Well, they might have been grieving too, honey, don't you think?
Well, they might have been grieving, but
They've all been losing people. They're kind of, maybe they're immune to it by now, that they're just watching the elderly ones dying. And,
oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Could he have had grief? I mean, is it normal to have grief when your sister dies?
I think so.
Yeah.
Very much
It's
so.
interesting because they've been walking through the desert for 40 years, right? And the younger generation, they grew up, understanding they're being fed by God, going
Right.
through it. They don't, they should recognize that they don't have to get new shoes or new clothing. It's all things. They're not recognizing God for who he is. And we're talking about that. Well, why aren't they following God and more observant or understanding and praying to God stronger than they are, seeing miracle after miracle every day? I think we see it and we have it too, and other people, and we don't recognize the miracles or what God does. I think some of us recognize more than others. I don't think the non-Christian recognizes what's happening right now. That the world, not just where we're living, is falling apart because of God not following God's way of the Word of God. And everything is. And the Bible says to be aware, be alert to what's happening. And I don't think
Now, Dad, we're going to stay in the story, though. You're kind of going way outside the story. So let's go back to this.
they're the same people as we are now.
Well-
Without recognizing what God is, what he's doing.
I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that they had manna every day, and that they were led by God by a column of fire, and that they didn't seem to appreciate that.
Taking it for granted.
Right. Yeah. They didn't appreciate taking it for granted, because what they say to Moses is they say, would to God we had died in the wilderness when our brothers died before the Lord. And why have you brought us out into this wilderness to kill us and our cattle with thirst? And why don't you bring us to this miserable place where there's no beans or figs or grapes or pomegranates and there's no water? So when was the last time any one of them had a pomegranate?
Well, they were walking through the wilderness for 20 years and they didn't see any of this. I mean, you could possibility they haven't seen it for, ever.
Yeah,
Childhood.
Some of them
And,
had
and, the- and on, but I want to point out that there had been a report by the spies,
Yes.
and there had been samples brought back by the spies that had been seen by some people
38 years ago.
38 years ago. And anyway, what they're doing is they're complaining about what the promised land, they're complaining that they don't have what's in the promised land.
Oh, that's really interesting, Jeff. You got to tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, especially the grapes. I think the grapes would have stood out even 38 years later, that big bunch of grapes that was brought back. We don't know if those guys are still alive, but that story could have been passed down, and there should have been some kind of recollection about that, and
Oh, interesting. I had not thought about that, Jeff. I'm glad you mentioned that because it had been 38 years since they had seen those grapes. So what might we learn about them? That they did see grapes and pomegranates and some of the fruit of the land of Canaan that they didn't have, and they're complaining right now that they don't have that.
God's calling them a rebellious, stubborn people.
Well, you're telling me.
That they don't want to listen or believe.
Okay. They don't want to believe.
well, they didn't want to do what it took to get in there is the
Okay.
problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
They were not willing to I mean, this is my story last week. So I mean, this is my area. So they were not willing to go into the dangerous thing and go get that stuff.
Okay.
And now
wanted
here
it.
we are 38 years later and they're complaining that they don't have it.
Are they being fed are they still being fed though?
Every
morning?
day. Every day they're
they're
being fed with
by
manna.
God. They
That's
don't have to
correct.
work.
That's
Okay,
correct.
They don't recognize it. They're not believing that this is God at work. Manna. That is
That's
God.
correct.
So
And not recognize it, being stubborn, I guess that's the problem. They're being stubborn. They don't want to believe in God. And yet he's showing them all these miracles and they just not recognizing. Do
What do y'all
we
think about
today
that?
not recognize miracles?
what do you think about that, you guys? What do you think about what my dad just said? They're not recognizing the glory of God by eating manna every day, drinking water from the rock that's been following them around, giving them water.
And their clothes aren't wearing out.
That's another very important thing. Their clothes, their shoes have not worn out in 40 years.
And they're seeing the glory of God from time to time. It doesn't matter to them.
What else might we learn about this? Could they have done anything different besides complain?
They should have worshiped God more. I mean, that's, and prayed more and obeyed the commandments more. I mean,
Yeah, they could have done that.
I mean, they had to be rather rebellious people. Just, I don't, they're pretty bad people. They're just, not following God's way, law, and living under God's commandments.
Okay, very good. Diane, you started laughing about something.
I
I
mean,
wonder
it's
if
like
they-
these are people from Minnesota complaining that it snowed again. I mean, really, it's the desert. Is this
Right.
the first time you've ever gone into an area and gone, I'm not sure where the water is?
But I thought they said
I don't know. I mean, why this time?
Okay.
Did
Vivian?
you say the rock follow them? Like when the rock followed them, did the rock not give them water? It
You know,
just-
that's very interesting because Paul says in the New Testament that everyone drank from the same spiritual drink, from the water that came from the rock, and the rock followed them. So right now, I guess for 38 years, the rock followed them, giving them water, and right now it stopped giving them water. Just right now. it seems. Okay,
And that's kind of interesting. Would you walk outside every day and you see the same rock and you've been walking every day for 5 miles or whatever, and whoop, you walk out of your house and there's the same rock. They either gotta be pretty dumb people or something, you know. I mean, I walked outside and I see a rock giving forth food and water every day. I say something's up.
But when you see it,
know.
when you see it stop giving water, you are tempted to complain.
yes, it does seem that way.
Right.
John,
Get
you haven't
used to
said
God.
anything. What do you have to say, John?
Are we dumb people right now?
I'm listening.
I have something.
So
Drew,
instead of worshiping God, go ahead,
Can I
Cheryl.
say something?
Mm.
I don't understand why they didn't just go and say to Moses, could you please to ask God or let God know that we don't have water right now.
Yeah, that could have been something that they did too. It's really interesting. Jonathan?
5,000 years later, or whatever it is, they still haven't changed.
Well, we're not going to mention that now because that we don't want to be racist, okay? Even though we do have,
No, I've got something to say.
Jewish
I wonder if
blood
some
in
people
our
complained
ranks.
about the manna.
What might we learn about them? That they didn't worship God. They didn't speak peacefully to Moses. They didn't speak peacefully to God. They didn't appreciate the water that they had and the food they'd been eating. The very first thing they do is they complain about things that they don't have and that they hadn't seen in 38 years. What else might we learn about them?
I mean,
Not
for
very
them,
bright.
like, we know that they traveled 40 years before they entered the land, but for them, they didn't know it's coming to the end. They didn't know like 2 more years, right? They might
One more.
think
It's the
like,
last year. This is the last year, Vivian.
right, but do they know? They didn't know, right? God didn't say
I
you're gonna
don't know
come.
if they knew or not. We don't know that. We don't know. I mean, it
Well, we
says
we don't know if they forgot about the grapes. I mean, we don't know how much is in the front of their minds.
right.
Right, so if I know, oh, this is the last year, I would be probably in a different state than if I don't know. I would, it's like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Right. I would, yeah. I've done that before, Vivian. I've been that way. I've been that little boy. I've been that little boy in the back seat. I've done that.
All right, let's go on with the story a little bit. And so Moses and Aaron withdraw from the congregation and they fall down on their faces before the Lord at the tent of meeting, at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the glory of the Lord appears to Moses and to Aaron, and God speaks to Moses. What might we learn about Moses from what he did? Did he argue with the people? No. Did he pray?
Yeah.
What did he say?
Yes.
He just fell on his face. He didn't say anything.
No.
I don't think the prayer has to be words.
So explain that to me, Diane.
Coming to that place is saying, I want to be in the presence of God. I mean, you can be with someone and not have to talk. And that's still that kind of communion.
Okay. All right. What do y'all think about that? Cheryl?
And I think, like Diana's saying, I totally agree. Prayer doesn't have to be words. And I think just them going and they fall down on their faces, it's kind of like they have this burden and they're just saying, God, here you are.
Yeah, and obviously,
What do we
it's-
do? It's like in their heart, what do we do?
and they get results. So
Okay, we'll talk about the results.
Diane's point is proven in the story that they're getting results
Okay,
by not
we'll see
talking.
that in just a minute.
Well,
We'll see-
doesn't God say he's gonna burn the people? And Moses prays that, please don't burn the people.
That was earlier.
Not here.
That was,
Earlier.
we did look at that. That was also something else that we did look at, that Moses prayed for the people with the golden calf.
Mm.
That's absolutely right. So here he's praying again. Now, Vivian, when you told the story about Moses striking the rock the first time, Moses argued with the people after they complained, right? And so what did they want to do to Moses?
They want to stone him.
Oh,
Oh.
did Moses learn anything in 38 years?
I I think it could also be like just a like, you know, like in the frustration, you like don't even know how to articulate. You just like,
Okay, so they're just falling down before the Lord, inarticulate. My dad mentioned something that we forgot to mention, is that yes, Moses did pray for the people. God wanted to burn them up and consume them. And Moses prayed and asked him not to do that. And you're absolutely right. So here's Moses again, falling on his face. This time he's praying without saying words, which is kind of interesting.
And this time
So-
he has his brother with him,
Brother wisdom. So,
and they're doing it together.
so what was the result of him falling on his face before God?
Glory of God.
He wouldn't burn
Glory
people.
of the Lord.
The glory of the Lord appeared. Yeah, he didn't burn him up. And then God spoke. Oh, wow. So we can learn about God.
He changed. He took away he changed that he didn't want to destroy the people. He changed his mind because Moses was a man of God and believed in him. So because of Moses and his belief and his faith, God changed. It didn't burn.
Okay.
Giving them
Right, and
another
that was earlier. Now, what can we learn about God, his response to Moses, that his glory would appear? He would speak to Moses when Moses just fell on his face.
Well, God was aware that the people were complaining.
Okay.
So again, to the point that the description of the problem is not necessary. You know, that thing that we do at the beginning of our meetings is just for the people in the meeting. God doesn't need us to describe that the power is out in Texas. God knows exactly what's going on.
Okay.
And, you know, it's, so anyway, God knows that Moses and Aaron are distressed and why they're distressed and why they're there at the tent.
Okay. So God understands all that. And his
God
glory.
understands it, and he's willing to give information. He's willing to give information to Moses and Aaron.
Before the information, what does he give?
His glory.
His glory. It's really interesting.
I think partly that's a little bit like a bug repellent. Kind of.
Diane, I'm not catching that one.
It's just, you know, you're not going to rush into that. If you're already there and it comes on you, great. If you're not, probably these guys have at least enough sense to keep their distance.
Okay, all right. I like that, Diane. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh.
Cheryl, you raised your hand too.
I was gonna say, I think it's kind of like that. I think God is pleased with that humility, and I think that he honors that.
He honored that humility with his presence. Okay, that's interesting.
So
So
from Diane,
God gives, go ahead, Jeff.
no, from what Diane said, I would ask the question, you know, do Moses and Aaron now prefer God to people? Do they prefer talking to God rather than people?
It would seem so, but we're not,
It
we
would
don't
seem
know.
so.
We don't
We
know.
don't
We don't know. And so God tells Moses, get the rod, which is in the most holy place of all, has buds and everything else on it, and gather the people and speak to the rock, and it'll give water. You'll bring forth water out of the rock. So Moses gets the rod, and they gather the people. And then Moses says, listen up, you rebels. Could Moses have done anything different than say, listen up, you rebels?
All right, guys, chill out a little bit.
I could have talked to the people. I just told them to chill out. That's true. I could have done that.
Just say nothing. Just say nothing.
Nada.
You can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
He needed to hear that, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Did he have to speak to the people?
Oh,
Oh.
that was
What
it.
can we learn about him that he spoke to the people instead of keeping his mouth shut?
God told them to speak to the people.
He told him to speak to the rock. Speak to the rock.
He was mad at
Okay,
them.
okay.
He was mad, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Well, because they had such a horrible, complaining attitude. So he was mad.
Well,
What do you think?
they brought up those rebels themselves.
Huh? Who did?
the Israelites, why didn't you let us die? Like,
Oh, they brought up the rebellious people. That's right. Like our brothers died in their rebellion against God. Like that was a good thing almost.
Did they have the ark with them?
The ark was in the most holy place, Dad. They left the ark there. They just got the rod. The rod was right there in the presence of God. They took it with them. Moses went and got it, took it, and said,
They brought
listen
the
up.
ark along with them, didn't they, when they're
No,
traveling?
no, not this time, not this time.
Well,
Said,
but
listen
you
up, you rebels. Shall we bring water out of this rock?
Right.
Who is the we here? I'm a little confused because who is Moses referring to when he says we? You guys got to help me understand that.
King God
Moses,
and Aaron.
Aaron and God.
Him and God, him and Aaron.
Oh,
yes.
all three of them.
Three of them.
It could have been him and God or him and Aaron, but the thing was that he included himself. That was his mistake.
Probably all five of them.
So if he's going to say anything, what should he say, you think? What should he have said?
I guess the point of what Cheryl's saying is that Moses is in the driver's seat. When he starts talking and he talks to them and calls them that name,
Yeah, well,
he's the one that's doing the initiating all the way through. So
Oh, well, who was he told to talk to?
Rock.
The rock. He didn't talk to the rock.
Aren't the people all aware why they're crossing the desert? Are they lost the reason why they're crossing the desert at all?
I believe, Dad, that they have lost that understanding completely as to why they're in the desert.
Completely why they're crossing the desert. They don't know why they're crossing the desert all of a sudden.
I
That's
think
Has
they
to be
forgot.
because they're being fed every day. They don't understand why they're being fed. Maybe, why am I why are my shoes not wearing out? Maybe they're that dumb. It's hard to, they must have some reason why they're crossing, or some of them must have an understanding why they're walking across the desert. If I was following God crossing across the United States for some reason, why am I walking across the United States? All right, and say I'm almost like to California, milk and honey, right? It's got to be a reason that my thinking would have to be there. Why did I follow them all across the United? The same idea. Why they're going them? My shoes don't wear. Why am I following God for?
It's really interesting. What do the rest of you think about that? Do you think they knew why they were in the desert?
I think assuming people thinking is a little optimistic.
Yeah.
At any given time, a large number of people are doing things because that is what they usually do, and not out of any
Wow.
particular reflective practice.
oh my goodness, wow,
Pretty good, Diane. You must have been a school teacher.
she sounds like a
Not
school
following the
teacher.
commandments
Well,
of
let me
God.
ask you this. What should Moses have done according to God? What did God tell him to do?
To
the
the
rock.
The rock.
And what did he have in his hand?
The
Rod,
Right.
Which rod? Was it
Aaron's
his-
rod.
It wasn't the rod of judgment that he normally carried?
No.
It was the rod of the high priest?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he just had to speak to the rock and water would have come out of the rock?
Yeah.
When Moses struck the rock the first time and water came out, and God said, I'm going to stand right in front of the rock and you're going to strike the rock. And there's a real beautiful prophetic picture of Jesus being struck by the wrath of God or by the judgment of God, better said. And then and that water came out, eternal life comes out. So now Moses, with the rod of the high priest, the living rod, speaking to the rock and water coming out, would that have been a picture, a prophecy and picture that eternal life could come out now simply by asking for it? What do you think?
It is a different, well, I mean, I think the big question is is there anything significant about God giving Moses a different procedure in a very similar problem? The problem is
Yeah.
the same, the rock is the same, and
The rod is different.
and the instruction is totally different. I think it's,
You know, Jesus said in John chapter 7, he said, on the last and great day of the feast, he said, he raised up his voice and shouted, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scriptures say, out of his innermost being shall flow rivers of living water.
I think that Moses is taking the name of the Lord in vain.
Whoa.
By he's the representative. God has not said he should condemn the people. He's calling them rebels. They've got to think that's coming from God.
Ooh,
Moses has just been in the presence under the
I
cloud.
know.
When Moses comes out from the cloud, he always speaks the words of God, right? He usually has that glory on his face. And now he's coming out. And so God did not say, go condemn these people,
Yeah.
which is a little surprising. I would have done it.
And so God said,
then-
you did not believe me. Oh my goodness, Diane, you just gave us the key to understand the story.
Yeah, that's very good, Diane.
Oh my goodness, Diane, because if they're thinking, God is saying, listen up, you rebels, I'm mad at you.
Right.
Bang, bang, bang with the living rod of the
And
high
plus,
priest.
and plus he uses the word we.
Yes. Oh man.
That is
And
a
so,
problem.
yeah, let's look at that part real quick. So God says, because you did not believe me to set me as holy, neither you, Aaron, Moses, nor you, Aaron, will lead these people into the land which I promised to give to them. Zach's coming in. He's an hour late. Cheryl.
Well, it seems to me like the belief was that just by speaking, the water would come out.
Yeah.
And so to me, it seems like that's what he didn't believe. And I don't know. And then the other thing about setting me apart, making me holy, which is that setting him apart, Moses like included him and God in like together on the same plane, you know?
Right.
And he didn't set God apart as holy.
Yes. And
God's
maybe
doing
God
it.
seemed,
I'm just a servant. He is God.
And what Diane said about Moses making God out to be an angry ogre.
Right. Oh,
Listen up, you rebels. I was just talking to God, and now God's calling you rebels, I think is what Diane just said.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, that really helps the story. Wow.
Hi.
Love you.
Love you too.
So, in the story ends with God was sanctified. God set himself apart as holy.
Mm-hmm.
Cheryl, go ahead.
I was thinking, what was that? Why was that? But right now I was thinking, so, Moses didn't set him apart. He like included him on the same plane, right?
Right.
So God said, okay, now I'm going to set myself apart from you. I'm going to go with them, but not you. So it was like he had to make that separation.
Wow. John?
God doesn't share his glory with anybody.
That's what it says. You're right, brother.
Oh yeah.
Wow, this has been a really good story. In the story,
Really good.
we saw that Moses allowed circumstances to anger him enough that he misrepresented God completely and lost out on God's blessing. Today, does that still happen? Do people get so upset that they misrepresent God and lose out on God's blessing? What's it look like? What kind of things get them upset? What do you think? What kind of things might get people upset so that they'll misrepresent God? John?
People keep on stealing from the offering box.
People stealing from the offering box. Wow, that would upset a pastor, I think. Yeah. Yeah, that's happened to me and Cheryl as we were in front of a church and offerings would disappear. we would each put in a amount of money, and when we counted it, there wasn't that much that we put in, so.
Wow.
Yeah. So one of the
Ouch.
things, yeah, one of the things might get people upset, that they would misrepresent God. You guys got to help me out here.
Well, I wonder if people are complaining about the manna, complaining about that they haven't had a nice juicy steak in a while.
Okay, yeah, not having what you want to have in the way of food. Zach, we're going to pray for you and your friend in just a few minutes. Is it okay if we
You
finish?
pray
this
for me
prayer
for
first?
what?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry that you're late.
I just wanted to shoot that message in while we were on.
And we'll pray for you as soon as we wrap up the story. Okay.
Alright.
Have you or anyone ever been in a situation where you were tempted to, or somebody was tempted to misrepresent God or be angry in a way that would misrepresent God, and you want to share with us about that?
Well, a lot of things in the world that I believe that, is stepping forward maybe in your life, believing something. I believe, I kind of preach it to Timothy all the time that we live in a miracle. I'm living a miracle. I just don't, everything that I have, I am so blessed beyond belief what I still. I don't have to think about, I have money coming in every month from the government. I have money coming in from retirement. I don't have to worry about anything. I have so many children I can live with. I have no basic. I see miracles. I call them miracles every single day, that I believe. Okay. I see healings. We pray for healing, and they happen. The next day they happen, and we forget about it. We don't think it was a miracle that we prayed. Continuous COVID. This thing here, my whole family nobody died.
You have 24 children, don't you?
Okay, nobody died. Nobody.
Yeah.
I don't hear anybody really crying about getting sick. And if they did, they say they got COVID. No, they didn't get COVID because they had a stuffy nose. Okay, these are miracles. I hear it every day. Okay, my family. Every day I meet people saying I had stuffy nose. Everybody thought I was going to die in the family. They shouldn't have. We are blessed beyond belief. That's all I feel. Okay, because we love the Lord. Okay, and I say every day is a miracle. So Timothy, I said, what are we going to eat tomorrow? Don't worry about it. I mean, that refrigerator is going to be full. He said, well, it used to be that it was overflowing. We used to have to give food away. I said, that's not, that God is feeding us every day now, every day. I said, I don't have to worry about nothing. I said, and most of my family don't have to worry about nothing. All right. Andrew, you don't have to worry about tomorrow's food, do you? Really? No. Okay, that's a miracle.
Don't bring me into it.
You're in a foreign country. Okay. You don't have a job, you're preaching the gospel, okay, and you're expecting God to feed you every day. He does in abundance. Okay?
As a missionary, God has provided for us.
Oh, you got a car. Holy mackerel. How'd that happen? Okay, that's a miracle. You need it. You gotta really grab it, and I grab those things. Okay, yeah, you got a car. Holy mackerel. I got a car. I got a truck. It snowed, a foot of snow out there, and I was laughing. It's beautiful. I remember driving a car in a foot of snow, 40 miles. I have to go to work, 20 miles. I had to go to work every day. When I was younger, sometimes drive back and forth in a foot of snow. And that caused me stuck all over the place. And God always let me get home back and forth in a little Volkswagen. Okay. A miracle, day after day after day. Okay. Well, that's been my life. All right. And I don't talk about it like I'm talking about it now, but I thank God for that. I just can't believe, the children, my gosh, he's still giving me grandchildren, wow, every day is a miracle. People just don't recognize how blessed we are. Okay. I think right now, I think God's coming. I kept getting carried away. Okay. Yeah. But it is a miracle. Everything I have is a miracle. All my children I'm looking at right now is a miracle. Okay. Wow. I have children preaching the gospel. I have some don't, but I'm not worried about it. God's gonna touch them. It's one way or another. We start praying for those children, they're gonna come around. Okay. But God, it will happen. I believe that. all of my heart and soul. You know, I'm not
Okay.
gonna
Amen.
actually
Dad,
not
just let
come
me,
to heaven
just let
with
me
me.
give you a time out there just to stop you so we can just pray to end. Just thank you for sharing that, Dad. Thank you for sharing that. God is good. God is very good. The children
Amen.
did not see that.
What good,
Amen.
you know, God is fantastic. You know, we live it,
This-
we live in
this-
it, we don't.
This story, just let me finish up here, Dad. This story is found in Numbers 20, verses 1 to 14. It's a very interesting story. We're going to end our Moses series with Diane next week, and then we're going to start a Luke series. And so if you want to be part of that Luke series, then you let me know. Let's just pray together, and then we'll pray for Zach.
I
Lord,
think we're praying. Are we praying for Zach or Zach's friend?
we're going to pray first to close the thing, and then we're going to ask Zach what's going on.
Oh.
Lord, we just thank you so much for this beautiful story about the provision of God to provide in the middle of nothing, what you did and how you provided for your children to have water. In Jesus' precious name. Thank you for that testimony, my dad.